When you do something at a really high level for a long period of time, so like different parts of my life, whether it was my home or every aspect from finances, I was realizing that that one part of me that functioned at a high level wasn't enough.
A sudden disappearance at the height of a $20 million a film career left Hollywood stunned and full of speculation about Cameron Diaz. After Annie in 2014, she quietly stepped away from acting with no explanation, just silence.
It's fun to do. I love it. I love acting. It's, I can go forever. I literally feel like sometimes I have unlimited, energy and, inertia.
In the absence of answers, rumors filled the gap. Pressure from Hollywood, health issues, marriage problems, even being pushed out entirely. But over the years, Cameron Diaz slowly began to confirm parts of the truth in carefully chosen interviews, and the real story is far more complex than any headline suggested. So why did she really walk away at her peak? And what changed that eventually brought her back? Join us as we uncover the real story behind Cameron Diaz's Hollywood exit. Why the tabloid explanations were all wrong. The story that the tabloid settled on by 2016 was that Cameron Diaz had been eased out of Hollywood by a combination of aging out of leading lady roles and a string of disappointments in her final years on screen. The evidence for this theory was the box office performance of What to Expect When You're Expecting and Sex Tape, neither of which matched the commercial success of her peak years. This theory was combined with the observation that she looked different than she had at 30. But those theories were simply rumors. What Cameron has said about this theory, in several interviews, is that those rumors have almost nothing to do with what actually happened. What she revealed during the Fortune's Most Powerful Women Summit in 2024 was that it felt like something she had to do to reclaim her own life. Nobody's opinion, nobody's success, no one's offer, no one's anything could change my mind about my decision of taking care of myself and building the life that I really wanted to have. The more detailed version of what she was describing came through her appearance on the Goop podcast, where she said, "I realized I handed off parts of my life to all these other people, and they took it. And some people I had to basically take it back and take responsibility for my own life." She has been consistent in describing the decade she spent away as a period of deliberately rebuilding something that had been handed off, and equally consistent in declining to name whatever it was that had been taken. On The Graham Norton Show, promoting Back in Action in 2025, she said something that landed with the clarity of a line that had been lived rather than prepared. "Oh my God, I loved it. It was the best 10 years of my life. I was just free to say, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm living my life." That is the statement of a woman who got exactly what she went looking for, found it to be worth what it cost, and returned to the work when she was ready, rather than when the industry decided she should be. But the decade away was not simply a matter of stepping back and exhaling. During those 10 years, she was going through something that she protected with the same privacy she applied to almost everything. Something the tabloids spent years speculating about and getting completely wrong, and that she finally named directly in 2024. The personal struggles no one knew she faced. When Cameron Diaz announced the birth of her daughter, Radix, in January 2020, she and Benji Madden posted a statement on Instagram that said, "We are so happy, blessed and grateful to begin this new decade by announcing the birth of our daughter. She has instantly captured our hearts and completed our family." The announcement surprised the public in the way that all of her major life events tended to surprise them entirely. Nobody had known she was expecting a child. The pregnancy and the years of fertility work that preceded it had been conducted in the same comprehensive privacy that she applied to everything that actually mattered to her. What emerged in 2024 is that the path to Radix had not been straightforward or easy. Cameron had spoken carefully about having worked hard for motherhood and having come to it as an active, effortful choice, rather than a natural progression, a statement that pointed toward fertility treatment without ever naming it directly. The second child, a son named Cardinal, arrived in March 2024 and was announced the same way. An Instagram post, no photographs, a request for privacy. And then in May 2026, at 53 years old, she announced a third child, a son named Nautas, in a statement that maintained the same deliberate privacy the family had always applied to their children, while prompting coverage that reflected just how unexpected the announcement was. The name Nautas, rooted in the concept of sailing, of navigating into the unknown without fear, sits alongside Radix and Cardinal as part of what has become, across 3 children, one of the more intentional feeling collections of names in celebrity culture. Each of them carries a meaning that feels chosen rather than decorative, which is consistent with everything else about the way Cameron and Madden have approached parenthood. Privately, deliberately, and on their own timeline, rather than the one the public assumed they were operating on. "I love being a mother," she told Entertainment Tonight in 2020. "It's the best part of my life. I'm so grateful and so happy, and it's the best thing ever." The children's faces have never appeared on social media. The couple does not post photographs of Radix, Cardinal, or Nautas, and they have declined to do so regardless of the level of public interest in the family. This is a relatively unusual choice for celebrities of their combined profile. Benji Madden is the lead guitarist of Good Charlotte, a band with a decades-long global following, and it reflects a value system that Cameron has applied consistently. The things that matter most to her are the things she protects most completely from the apparatus of celebrity that she spent 20 years working inside. And the reasons she had for wanting privacy became considerably clearer when she returned to public life and started talking about what working inside that apparatus had actually been like, particularly for women, in the years before the industry was forced to reckon with what it had been asking them to tolerate. What she said about Me Too. When Cameron Diaz came back to a film set in late 2022 to begin shooting Back in Action, she had been away from the industry for 8 years, and the Me Too movement had happened in the intervening period. What she observed about the difference between the culture she remembered and the culture she walked back into is worth paying close attention to. Speaking on the Skip Intro podcast, she described the environment on sets earlier in her career. "There was always just like that one guy, on set, that you were like, God, here he comes again. There were always layers and layers of inappropriateness that you just kind of had to put up with." She said that after Me Too, going back to the industry felt different. People were no longer expected to quietly accept inappropriate behavior from certain individuals because that kind of behavior had been challenged and changed. This is important context for the handing off parts of her life to other people language she used on the Goop podcast, because it suggests that at least some of what she was describing was the structural expectation of female endurance that the industry had built into its standard operating procedure. Whether the retirement was partly a response to that culture, as well as a deliberate pursuit of the family life she wanted, is something she has not made explicit. But the language she has chosen across multiple interviews points in that direction without ever quite arriving at a direct statement. She has also spoken about something more straightforwardly positive about the return, that the work itself felt different. "The industry is so different," she told the Skip Intro podcast, describing the changed culture as one of the things that made coming back a meaningful experience rather than simply a professional pivot. She had spent a decade building the life she described wanting, and she was returning to an industry that had at least partially addressed the conditions she had been describing as layers and layers of inappropriateness, which meant the return was not a return to the same thing, but to a version of it that had been altered in ways she found significant. The changed industry was one confirmation. The Epstein files were another kind of confrontation entirely, one that arrived without warning in the middle of her comeback, and that required her team to respond directly and specifically to what the documents actually contained. Her name in Epstein files and what her team said. In January 2024, a set of court documents related to Jeffrey Epstein was unsealed as part of a defamation lawsuit involving Ghislaine Maxwell, and Cameron Diaz's name appeared in the material. In February 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi released a further cache of DOJ documents related to the Epstein investigation, including flight logs and a redacted contact book, and Cameron's name appeared again. The Internet, which had been waiting for the Epstein files with an intensity that had built for years, reacted accordingly. Her name trended. The association was made by many without much attention to what the documents actually said about her. What they actually said was specific and limited. According to the documents, Cameron was referenced in the context of Epstein's name-dropping, mentioned by Epstein as someone he knew in the way that a man who built proximity to celebrity routinely used famous names to create an impression of access. Cameron never met Jeffrey Epstein, nor was she ever in the same place as him or had any association with him whatsoever, her representative said in a statement issued to multiple outlets. Regardless of the fact, he may or may not have mentioned her name or implied that he knew her. The DOJ's own note accompanying the February 2025 document release acknowledged that the first phase of files largely contains documents that have been previously leaked but never released in a formal capacity, meaning much of the material, including Cameron's name, had already been publicly reported in some form before the formal release. The distinction between being named in Epstein's files and having any meaningful connection to Epstein or his crimes is a distinction the coverage did not always observe carefully. Her name appeared alongside those of Kate Blanchett, Bruce Willis, Naomi Campbell, and Leonardo DiCaprio, all of whom were referenced in similar ways, and none of whom have been accused of any involvement in Epstein's criminal activity. The specific context in which Cameron's name appeared, as a celebrity whose name Epstein apparently invoked in conversation, places her in a category of people who were famous enough to be useful to someone building an impression of social access, rather than in any category involving actual connection to the man or his network. Her team said so immediately, and the documentary record supports what they said. The Epstein moment was a disruption during an already turbulent comeback, because the production of Back in Action had been disrupted in ways that could have ended the film entirely, and that required a level of professional composure from Cameron that the finished product does not reveal. The comeback that almost didn't happen. Back in Action began filming at Shepperton Studios in London in December 2022, moved to a Georgia unit in March 2023, and was 2 weeks from completing principal photography when everything stopped. In April 2023, Jamie Foxx suffered a brain bleed leading to a stroke, requiring emergency surgery and a months-long recovery, during which he had to relearn to walk and undergo intensive speech therapy. He was reported to have had a 5% chance of survival. Production shut down with a critical 15-minute section of the film's first act still unfilmed. Director Seth Gordon has been explicit about this. If we owed scattered little bits all over the film, I don't know how that would have played out. But this was a missing 15-minute chunk, and we really needed it to even preview or screen the film properly. The day after Jamie was hospitalized, production resumed using a body double for his scenes. The Hollywood writers and actors strikes that hit the industry in mid-2023 then meant that even after Jamie's recovery, the production could not return to finish the missing section for months. Gordon and his team waited. When Jamie recovered sufficiently to return to set in early 2024, they filmed the missing 15 minutes, and the film was finally complete. Cameron addressed rumors that Jamie had been difficult on set, reports that described him as making everything miserable, and allegedly making Cameron consider never working again by defending him in specific terms. "Jamie is the best," she said on the Lipstick on the Rim podcast. "He's like the cheerleader for the entire crew, and everybody loves him." She described the on-set problems as the normal kind of production turbulence, other than, obviously, toward the end, a reference to the hospitalization she declined to discuss in detail out of respect for Fox's privacy. Back in Action premiered on Netflix on January 17, 2025, and became one of the most watched Netflix releases of its premiere weekend, driven by genuine audience affection for Cameron and considerable curiosity about whether the 11-year absence had changed anything about how she occupied a screen. The critical response was mixed. The script was described as functional rather than different, but the chemistry between Cameron and Jamie was widely noted as the reason the film worked. The title, as director Seth Gordon observed, had landed with an unintended coincidence. The film is about a retired spy pulled back into her former life, and the actress playing her had spent the previous decade doing exactly what her character had done before the plot began. "It's almost as if Back in Action was meant to coax her out of retirement," Gordon said, "but I swear it wasn't." Back in Action was the return. But what confirmed the rumors about who she had become during the decade away, about what she had decided to prioritize, and about whether she intended to trade the life she had built for the one she used to have, came through not just what she said about the film, but about everything else. What she has confirmed at 53. Cameron Diaz is not unretired in the way the word was initially used, as though the decade away was an interruption to be corrected rather than a period of deliberate construction. She is selectively working again, from a position that is structurally different from the one she occupied before 2014. She is not chasing the role. She is choosing it. The distinction matters because the conditions she described, handing off parts of her life to other people, layers and layers of inappropriateness she had to absorb as part of the job, were the conditions of the position she occupied when she was one of the most commercially valuable actresses in Hollywood. And she has been explicit that she is not returning to that position on those terms. She is currently set to appear in Jonah Hill's dark comedy Outcome alongside Keanu Reeves, and will reprise Princess Fiona in Shrek 5 alongside Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, and Zendaya, both of which were her choices, made for her own reasons on her own schedule. She launched her organic wine brand Avaline in 2020, which she has described as a genuine business venture rather than a celebrity vanity project, something she built during the decade away, and that has grown into a significant commercial operation. The wine, the children, the marriage that she has described as the thing she is most grateful for in her entire life. The interviews in which she describes the 10 years away as the best decade she has lived. All of these are evidence of the same underlying argument, that walking away from the highest-paid actress over 40 in Hollywood in 2013 was not a retreat, but a reorientation toward a set of values that the career, as it was structured, was not compatible with. The third child at 53 is the detail that completes the picture. She and Benji Madden have now announced 3 children: Radix in 2020, Cardinal in 2024, Nautus in 2026, in the same format each time. A brief statement, no photographs, a request for privacy. The names alone communicate something about the approach. A daughter named for an invented word that sounds like both radical and radix. A son named for a direction and a point on a compass. A son named for the act of sailing into unknown water. These are not the naming choices of people who are operating by default. They are the choices of two people who have thought about what they are building and what they want to call it, and who have maintained the same level of privacy about their family across 5 years and 3 announcements without a single crack appearing in the consistency of that boundary. What Cameron Diaz has confirmed at 53, across the interviews and the announcements and the carefully chosen projects and the decade of documented choices, is something that the tabloid version of her story never quite accounted for, that she knew what she was doing, that the retirement was not a crisis or a defeat, but a decision, made clearly, on grounds she has now explained precisely enough that the explanation holds up, that the life she went to build was worth building, and that the woman who comes back to set now is not the one who left. Not because the industry changed, or she changed, or time passed, but because she got what she went looking for. And the wanting is different once you have already found it. Do you think Cameron made the right decisions, or she could have accomplished everything she wanted to while building her career? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.